if you give a dad a podcast, then it would be of you to give it a spin or two. I'll go to your room. I'm in my room grounded, but I got a podcast on.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming back to the show. My name is Jared. I am the host of If You Give a Dad a Podcast, and I have a really cool guest on tonight with me. It is a fellow podcaster. He is also in radio. He's a radio personality for Free Radio Nashville and WHIN, and he's the host of Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr. And I am talking to Stanley Karr tonight. Man, how are you doing?
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Jared. I know we've been trying to get this book for a long time. I'm glad we finally were able to do it, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely glad to have you on. You know, I follow what you do and everything when it comes to your podcast, and so I thought it'd be really cool to kind of get you on here to kind of talk about it, because
Sure.
podcasting's not always easy. So, you know, it's nice to get on here and maybe talk with somebody else who, you know, who does a lot of the same things that I do here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and if you really love what you do, you know, you take that time to really put it together,
Right.
and so it is a grind, but it is worth it in the end. So just keep at it as much as you can.
Exactly. Yeah. I actually, as we're recording this, I have been doing this for 3 years as of today. I released my first episode in 2022. I think that's when you started too, was 2022 as well. Yeah.
Late 2022 I started.
Okay. So you're pushing that 3-year mark as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, some days it's a little easier to get in here and do it than it is others, but I love doing this. And so, you know, it's become a passion of mine, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, Wrestling with Heart definitely has become a passion of mine, and something I like to do.
Right.
More than just make it a podcast. I'd like for this to become its own brand. So we can get into that later on throughout the episode for sure.
Okay. So let's actually kind of talk about your podcast right now and how you got started with doing that. It's called Wrestling with Heart, and you talk to people about different charities and things like that in the wrestling world.
Yeah. So I started Wrestling with Heart about almost 3 years ago. I worked for a college radio station in the greater Nashville, Tennessee area, and I was taking this class over at the college that my boss was teaching at, and it was on podcasting, and it was the same year I had attended both WrestleMania in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
Stone Cold Steve Austin returned to that show competing for the first time in almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And I also attended another event called SummerSlam that took place in my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. And coming from a radio background, I've been doing a lot of music shows. I had hosted a show called The Piano Men for 9 years on a low power FM station in Nashville. And I thought to myself, you know, since I've done all these music shows, and why not do something different?
Yeah.
You know, wrestling, I've always been a fan. But if I do a wrestling podcast, I got to do something that really hasn't been done before or touched on before. And as you know, there's like several different podcasts of wrestling out there on
Definitely.
You know, it's crowded. So I had to pick something and talk about something and touch on something that really hadn't been talked about as much, and that was charity work and volunteering and helping out in your community. Because I feel like, you know, a lot of times if you watch wrestling, you'll see the work that companies like WWE and AEW do to give back. And you have, you know, John Cena, he's like the Make-A-Wish king. He's always granting wishes for sick kids and young kids that are going through things. And I felt, why not, you know, because you also see too, like the dark side of the business, you know, dark side of the ring and drug addictions and things like that.
Right.
Depressing stuff. And I'm like, why not talk about the good side of the business and showcase that with this podcast? So Wrestling with Heart was created, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. You know, and I've seen a lot of the guests that you've had on. You've had some pretty big names on your show. and everything. So you've had some success when it comes to bringing on all these different guests and everything. I know just from my side, trying to get some of these people on and working with scheduling and things like that can be a chore, So you have a full-time job that you do as well, working with radio and things like that. So trying to find that time and schedule to do all of this, I'm sure, can be very strenuous.
Yes. And so, I mean, like, I'm very flexible, and I try to find good times that would line up with everyone. So we get it done, get it recorded.
Right.
And try not to take too much time, out of people's days, make it, I'd say about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Probably amount, maybe an hour at most, definitely no more than an hour.
Yeah.
You look at our episodes, those are like the average length of each one is about maybe 30 to an hour, most 30 minutes. So yeah, it's just finding the time and making sure that everything lines up as smooth as possible.
Right. Yeah. And, you got to be flexible with people because you never know what's going on. I mean, I know I had one that I scheduled today that I'm going to be doing it. It's like 1:00 in the afternoon. Most of the time I do these at, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, on most days, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And if you want to have some of these people on, you've got to be like, okay, well, I can make a change in my schedule to make sure that this happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about the flexibility and managing it and trying to create less hurdles to go through as possible, just to try to get it all in. So,
right. Was there something that you remember as a kid when it comes to wrestling that kind of is that starting moment for you to where you're like, oh, I love this? Everybody has that one memory. It's like their first memory of wrestling.
I would say the larger than life characters. Like the first time I watched The Rock was there full time, and so my dad was watching Monday Night Raw one night, and I just sat next to him, just see this big dude with a Hawaiian t-shirt and glasses, and the hair and everything, and I just was like, man, this is so awesome. I just was hooked right away from there, and so. Just watching the storylines week to week play out. There's nothing like this weekly episodic show where you want to find out what happens next.
Right.
So for me, that was like, I want to watch. I want to see what happens. So that was my hook.
So you got to come in on kind of the Attitude Era and things like that.
Yeah.
I unless you were there a lot of times, I mean, you can go back and rewatch it, but going to school the next day and be like, oh my God, did you see what happened? And things like that. I loved being able to talk with my friends when it came to wrestling. Funny thing was, though, I didn't have television in my home as a kid. And so I always had to go to my friend's house if I wanted to watch wrestling or things like that. But I always found a way. Always, because wrestling in that time period, there's nothing else like it.
Yeah, I mean, it was really hot. I mean, the thick of the Monday Night Wars. I mean, I was maybe 4 or 5 when I first started watching, and so just being able to sit down and watch and getting familiar with all these characters and people. You had Rock, you had Triple H, you had the Undertaker, you had Steve Austin and Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho and Kane and all these people. It was that good. I mean, and then, I didn't really get to watch WCW and ECW until later on, but guys were doing some great things as well with the NWO and Goldberg and you had Taz and RVD and the Dudley Boys and all these people like coming up. It was a very good time to be a fan.
Right.
My personal favorite era, though, of wrestling, because I got a little older when I can actually remember this, was the Ruthless Aggression era, which came after the Attitude Era. With that's when you started seeing kind of like that mix of like you still had the edginess of the Attitude Era, but the wrestling picked up. I mean, you had Kurt Angle, you had Eddie Guerrero, you had Chris Benoit, you had Rey Mysterio, you had Edge, you had, the rise of Cena and Brock and Batista and Orton, all these guys. And you had just a lot of really cool things going on there. I feel like at that time with the brand split with Raw and SmackDown, I think it gave way to having really good shows. I don't know if you were watching during that time, but I feel like when you had two separate shows, I feel like it gave talent that opportunity that weren't really getting showcased with one roster.
Right.
Being able to, get that spotlight. And I enjoyed that a lot, really.
So I will say, as I became an adult, I was able to start watching more, because at that time I was like, man, I'm going to have a TV. My parents didn't have one, but I'm going to, because this is something I want to be able to see on a regular basis. And so around that era, during the Ruthless Aggression and stuff, I would say that's when I really kicked it into gear when it came to watching, every week and being able to see everything. I used to have stacks of the DVDs, from all the pay-per-views that were going on. I remember the first WrestleMania that I ever got to watch in its entirety. I bought it used on DVD, and that was WrestleMania 21, when John Cena won his first championship, and so did Batista, or world championship, and I think that's when Edge won the Money in the Bank contract for the first time. And I was in awe watching that. And I was like, I need more, after watching that. And so now that's probably my favorite WrestleMania of all time.
Yeah. And you can even go back and watch how I feel like that show was like almost like built the building blocks for the future. It really, really was.
It was. Yeah.
Because all three guys you just mentioned went on to have really, like Hall of Fame-esque careers.
Right. Yeah. I was talking to one of my friends. It was either today or yesterday. I was talking to them about this. And, that's whenever John Cena had the whole storyline with JBL. And, dude, they had a very good feud that I feel is kind of underrated. People don't talk about their feud as much as they should, because JBL was able to make Cena shine like no other in that. And he should get his flowers just for that alone. It was amazing.
Yeah, and SmackDown, I feel like at that time too was pretty underrated. A lot of people don't really talk about it as much compared to when Lesnar was there. And the SmackDown 6, you had that period, and that was iconic in its own right. But I think during this period of time, you at least were trying to build up new stars. I just interviewed Rene Dupree. I was talking to him. I mean, that guy had so much potential, and he was coming up, and he was wrestling Cena for the U.S. title. So got to talk about that with him. But you had Dupree there. You had Charlie Haas on his own with Shelton Benjamin. You had Kenzo Suzuki, Mark Jindrak, and all these guys. I feel like that they were trying to bring up, and it was like, man, like that was really, I like seeing guys and girls get opportunities, that I feel like deserve them, just to be able to, get that TV time. And I think it's better when you have two shows, separate shows, whereas if you just have one, it's like hard to fit everybody in.
Right. Well, I definitely agree with that. And one of the cool things about SmackDown at that time was you had the Cruiserweight division, which I miss the old Cruiserweight division. That was so much fun to watch, and it was a spectacle all on its own whenever they would have the Cruiserweight championship matches and stuff. And SmackDown had that, whereas, Raw was more, there was a podcast that I used to listen to, and it was during like the Ruthless Aggression era. And it was out of the UK. It was I think the Sun is the one that put it on. It was called like WrestleCast is what it was
Mm-hmm.
called. And Orton was talking about this, and a couple of the other guys were talking about this. Your SmackDown shows were a lot more action. And that's the reason why you had things like JBL saying, we fight on Friday nights, because there was more action. There was a lot more dialogue on Raw. And so if you wanted to see more wrestling, that's where people would go, is to watch it there.
Yeah, I mean, you had like, the highlight reel with Chris Jericho, and you had like all these different like talk show segments. I feel like that took place on Monday night, or Friday night you had your promos, but you had, your technical wrestlers. I mean, Finley and Regal. Remember seeing those guys compete a lot. You had, I think Booker T, I feel like carried SmackDown quite a bit during that time as well.
Yeah.
Especially when he became King of the Ring and that iconic King Booker run. I think that was genius. I mean, years later.
Yeah.
Classic. But yeah, I mean, when you have guys that I feel like JBL and Booker T and Batista, I feel like they're synonymous with SmackDown. I feel like they really carried that show and took it to new heights. So I was a SmackDown kid growing up.
Yeah. I know that during that time, that's when they would do, which this brought up another thought. I'm going to try to hang on to that, and we'll get back to it. And that is when you saw a lot of, like, before they had like the bragging rights pay-per-view and stuff, Survivor Series was the bragging rights pay-per-view. You had SmackDown versus Raw, and I was always rooting for SmackDown, whenever those matches would happen, because you had Evolution that was for Raw, and then you had, all these other guys for SmackDown. And that's where I was at that time, is when it came to Survivor Series and things like that, I was always SmackDown.
Yeah. And the thing is nowadays, I don't know if they really use the brand split or how they use the brand split, but you didn't really see a lot of people cross over as much. Whereas I think that nowadays you kind of have people kind of jump from show to show and appear on both. So I love like the old brand split where you just kept it and nobody really appeared on either show until they had the draft or whatever they used to do. So
so bringing up another point that I had there, something I've noticed: Survivor Series is no longer Survivor Series. It's always War Games. I don't remember the last time they had an actual Survivor Series match. It's always the big spectacle is War Games now. And I would like to see those again. I enjoyed those matches.
You're talking about the War Games or Survivor Series?
Survivor Series, like an actual Survivor Series match, but they do War Games at Survivor Series now, usually.
I kind of feel like they're just kind of revamping it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just a way to, because I think like for years they wouldn't really use a lot of the old WCW themed.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought in like the Great American Bash, and now they're, I think, using Halloween Havoc.
Yeah. NXT does a lot of the WCW pay-per-views. Yeah.
So, I mean, they're bringing in like these old names, and I think they did Heat Wave for ECW as well. So they're recycling like these old, which I think is great. I think to pay homage to the past and update it, make it current.
Right.
So I like that. I do like that they're doing that today. Yeah. But I would love to see the old school Survivor Series return, because I think that we could always use something that's what's old is new again, and so bringing that back would be good.
Yeah. Well, I remember. I mean, if you had a sole survivor, I remember whenever they did when they were still doing the Authority, and that really pushed Dolph Ziggler, to be a bigger star than he was. I mean, he always needed to be a big star. I am a huge Dolph Ziggler fan, or, Nick Nemeth. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's amazing at what he does, and he deserves all of the attention that he gets because he's an amazing wrestler. He's amazing at selling. And whenever they had that match, that kind of pushed him into another stratosphere.
Yeah, I definitely think Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth is a great talent, and He's doing great work in TNA, and yeah, I think he'd be a great surprise appearance for Royal Rumble, or if he decided to he decided to re-sign with the company again at some point. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
he definitely would be someone who I feel like would make a great producer, even
right. Yeah,
line.
yeah, he definitely has that mind to. Eh, people get behind him whenever he's in the ring. Even
Mm-hmm.
if he wasn't being pushed, people still were invested in his matches. So we're going to kind of switch this over a little bit and talk some more about you and different things that we kind of
Sure.
got off on a whole
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah,
ruthless aggression era thing, which is great. I love that to where, we can just talk
yeah.
about whatever on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So was radio always something that you wanted to do?
I had always wanted to be in the entertainment business. I think as a kid, even in some form or another. My college that I work at now, I had gotten my associate's degree from, and in entertainment media production. And one day, as I was touring the campus before I went to school there, I discovered that they had a radio station. And me, a music lover, and someone that something that I feel like that I've been pretty knowledgeable about over the years, um, I decided to get involved
Mm-hmm.
and start a radio station and just sign up for shifts, and just like that, I started getting hooked into it, and I was doing weekly shows there, and eventually I decided to look into doing a radio show at this low power FM station, which I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I started this show called The Piano Men, which is a show about piano players in various genres of music. So anything from like Billy Joel to Nat King Cole, or um, Elton John, Paul McCartney, or
Yeah.
Count Basie, and Keith Jarrett, Dave Brubeck. I mean, just a variety of different artists and
Right.
people play on there. So I've been doing that now for 9 years, and I've had on several people over the course of my time over at Radio Free Nashville for the Piano Men, like Jim Brickman, who wrote the song "Angel Eyes"
Yeah.
and "The Gift," and "Valentine," which was recorded by Martina McBride. Also, John Tesh, who also I believe he wrote the score for the NBC basketball game, the Round
Oh,
Rock
okay.
NBA games when they were on NBC for many years. And I talked with him. There's a guy named Michael O'Mardian who gave Steely Dan, who played with Steely Dan, and gave Christopher Cross his break in the music business. And also a guy named David Sanchez, who was one of the early members of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. So I've been fortunate enough to have these people on my show to talk to them about their careers,
Yeah.
and been able to educate people about music.
Yeah. So you said you like music. I'm a music guy. I play a bunch of different instruments.
Yeah.
What kind of music do you like to listen to?
I mean, anything that's catchy, has a good beat to it. I mean, I've always been a classic rock guy.
Okay.
80s, that's kind of like my core, but I like 90s. I like 70s and 60s music. Um, I do like some contemporary stuff. I've started to get into country more in recent years. So just anything I kind of have like an eclectic taste. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, country, you kind of have to, especially with where you're at. I mean, it's the capital of country. We're in Nashville, so
yes, yeah.
I've actually been able to talk to a few of the upcoming people out of that area. With some of, I had a lady who sent me actually a bunch of different musical guests there for a while through Core PR, and they amazing people that you wouldn't hear unless you went out and looked for them. The amount of talent that there is in Nashville is astounding.
It's amazing, how vast,
Yeah.
the talent pool is in this
Right.
area, because everywhere you go, there's somebody playing on Broadway or somebody playing at a bar or a restaurant.
Yeah.
Just like that,
Yeah.
they make it big. So it's great to see these people, their careers rise, and to be able to talk to some of these people
Right.
on my show is a great feeling.
Yeah. So it's funny because I'm actually from Memphis area.
Okay.
And so you've got Nashville in this country, and then you go to Beale Street in Memphis, and you've got blues, and some of the best things that I heard was people playing in the alleyway in Beale Street, and you hear that same thing when it comes to Nashville, the people just playing outside, some of the most amazing music you've ever heard.
Yeah. And there's a suburb of Nashville called Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go downtown at night, even there'll be somebody playing on a street corner, and they'll get an audience. They'll have people like coming to them, and they'll just, they'll cheer them on, and people walk by. So it's everywhere you go in this area is just, it's a magical feeling.
That's cool.
Music.
That's really cool. Yeah. So you brought something up there a little bit ago at the start of the show when it comes to wrestling with heart and how you want to make it a brand. And I kind of wanted to ask you, what are some of the goals that you have with this show and what you're wanting to do?
Yes. So in addition to the podcast, I want to get the podcast syndicated on radio stations.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
I'm currently on 2. At the moment, I'm on WDJY 99.1 FM out in Dallas, Georgia, on Sunday afternoons, and also on 92.9 FM in Denver, Colorado, Denver Open Media. So just working on trying to get some things, sponsors and whatnot, trying to get everything kind of set up for more places to get the show picked up. And so I'd like to get syndicated, and also I'd like to turn my podcast into a book, with all the interviews that I've done so far, try to compile my interviews that I've done with various wrestlers and write a book. Cause I think, we could use more wrestling podcast books out there. So why not?
That's actually a really cool idea. I would read it for sure.
Thank you.
So when you're not doing your podcast and you're not doing the radio, what kind of stuff do you like to do? Do you have any hobbies?
Yeah, I mean, hang out with friends, exercise, go to movies.
Yeah.
They're kind of my basic ones.
Okay.
Just, chill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You got to take time for yourself, man.
Exactly.
Doing all this different stuff. I've got 2 kids. I've got a wife. I've got friends. You got to make time for that stuff as well. You can't just.
Self-care is very important.
It is, for sure.
It is.
So who would you say, and these type of questions always kind of get me because, and you'll know what I mean here in a minute. Who would you say was your easiest interview that you've done?
I've had some very good guests that I've had on the show as of late.
Yeah.
So I had interviewed, I'd say Rob Van Dam was a pretty good one. That one's actually going to come out at the time of this recording. It's going to come out tomorrow. That was a pretty good one.
Okay.
Easiest ones. Gangrel was a great one.
Yeah.
Mark Marrow.
Yeah.
That was good.
That's
I enjoyed
cool.
talking with him. Victoria, that was a fun one. Jake the Snake Roberts was good.
Yeah.
Teddy Long was awesome.
Yeah. So Jake the Snake was my favorite growing up,
Yeah.
and he seems like he's one of those guys I would love to just have a conversation with. I was listening to DDT was recently on the Undertaker's podcast.
Yes.
And hearing him tell stories about Jake, I'm just like, man, that would be awesome just to sit there and listen to him talk about wrestling, is amazing. Anytime I can get the chance to do that, I love hearing that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, DDP is someone who, is kind of like one of my dream guests.
Yeah.
So, and he saved so many lives. Like,
yeah.
so many. He's worked with Jake. He's worked with Scott Hall. Really turned around so many people. I believe he even helped out Jericho for prepare for like one of his returns to WWE at one point.
Yeah.
So he's helped out so many people and has inspired so many individuals. I think that he is someone that's going to be remembered for the stuff he's done more so outside the ring. Of course, he'll always be remembered for his contributions in the ring, but I think outside the ring, he's definitely made a difference, positive difference in people's lives.
Yeah. What would you say was your favorite feud in wrestling?
Favorite feud?
Yes.
That's a tough one. I think Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero, I would say, is probably one of my favorites. Austin and Rock was a classic.
Yeah.
Let me think. Jeff Hardy and CM Punk had a pretty good rivalry too.
They did, definitely.
I think that was a really good one. And Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, that's like an all-time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the storytelling with that one, especially off the charts, because you had the first one in Houston, I believe,
At 25, yeah.
25, and then the second one in Phoenix. I'd say that sequel, those two for sure. I think those are some great stories, and Triple H and The Undertaker had a good feud going on too after that. So,
right. I think those 4 back-to-back were some of the best matches that I'd seen in Undertaker in a while.
Yeah,
and he gave his all in those, and yeah, I agree. Those are wonderful matches to go back and watch. I can watch those right now.
It's crazy to think about because I think Taker has had such an incredible career. You had the 90s Undertaker, like 90 to 99, with all the stuff from when he first came in with the gray gloves and everything like that, the boots.
Yeah.
Purple and black Undertaker to Gothic Undertaker and Ministry Taker. Yep. So Dead Man, the first run of the Dead Man was like all through the 90s. Then you had the American Badass gimmick from the early 2000s. So kind of gave the Dead Man gimmick a break.
Yeah.
But when he came back and had this second run of the Dead Man, I feel like he did his best work, in my opinion, during that run, because he just put on so many incredible bangers.
Yeah.
During that time. I mean, you had the matches with Shawn, you had the matches with Edge, matches with Batista, even the matches with Orton were great. You talked about WrestleMania 21 a bit ago. His match with Randy Orton was really good, and the Hell in a Cell match too that year.
Yeah.
Great storytelling.
For sure. Well, and that whole story with them was wonderful. I mean, I think that's where the kind of RKO out of nowhere might have started, because he picked him up for the choke slam and he turned it into the RKO, and that whole thing with them, because he thought he got rid of him, he had him in the casket, and he set it on fire. And then he came back after Orton. Was it Survivor Series that he came back?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, Orton's like visibly terrified, that just the amount of storytelling that they put into that alone is very memorable. And that feud was wonderful.
Exactly. So, yeah, I would say the 2000s were a very good decade for wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and you definitely agree on that. I can tell we could talk a lot about, the Ruthless Aggression era.
Yeah.
So when it comes to researching for your guests and finding, these different charities that they're working on and stuff, I mean, I know just from what I have here, that, it takes time to find these. How do you go about finding your guests once you find out that they have like a charity that they work with?
So I just contact them through email and messaging and just
Yeah.
basically just ask if they do any charity work in addition to, the work that they do in the ring. I mean, we'll talk about their careers, but we'll
Yeah.
talk about, if they've done any charity work or even have a story that they want to share that might inspire someone. And we also do that. I interviewed this one girl, Black Dahlia is her stage name, ring name, and she was telling me a story about how she got into wrestling and trained under Rikishi and Funaki, and midway through her training, she broke her foot, and she, after years of not getting the proper health insurance to get surgery, she was finally able to get it and resume her training, and has just been determined to come back ever since. So I try to get those kinds of guests as well to talk about their stories, because I think those are important.
Definitely. And, I mean, that's kind of similar to what I like to do here is I like to give people a chance to tell their story, because it's important to allow these people to do that, to give them a chance to come on and maybe talk and give them a window of opportunity to have people that maybe never would have heard their story.
Yes, I mean, I've had people that have donated to various children's hospitals, St. Jude's,
Mm-hmm.
the Children's Medical Network. I've had guests that have helped out with food pantries and have done like Toys for Tots and done stuff for the holidays. So I've had so far a variety of people who have done a variety of different charitable works, and have talked about their passions for helping out in their community, because it's as you know, it's a very tough world out there, and we could all use a little bit of positivity in our lives. So for that, 2 hours or 3 hours, it's an escape, and to be able to meet these people, to meet their favorite wrestlers and have that moment with them, it's all rewarding in the end.
Right. So you actually do you do 2 episodes a week now?
Yes, we went from one episode a week to two, and trying to push out as many episodes out as possible, because I think the more content you get out, I've noticed, the more visible you are on different platforms,
Right.
and it's consistency. So that's kind of what I've started to build, is that consistency, so that we get more visibility and we start growing with the network and with the channel, the YouTube channel, trying to reach more subscribers and hopefully,
Yeah.
start rising.
What was it like going from doing the one to the two? Because, right now I'm going from, I do an audio version on Monday and I drop a video version of my show on Wednesday, and trying to find the time to do all of this stuff, it's crazy. So what was it like going from, doing the one to now doubling up?
Well, it is time consuming, and you have to find the time to do it. And it's all about discipline and trying to, try to make sure that the content you're putting out is quality content, and trying to pace yourself and try to narrow down, what cuts you want to make and what edits you want to put in and take out. And it takes a lot of discipline and hard work, but the more you do it, you start conditioning yourself to do it, and it starts becoming like a muscle memory. You remember how to do it, you're disciplined, you start doing it more often, and you can do it in your sleep.
So we're going to kind of talk about Mania for a minute. Do you have any predictions?
Well, I mean, we're about a month away from
About a month. Yeah.
So let's see. We got Jay Uso facing Gunther for the world title.
Yep.
I mean, Jay has to win, in my opinion. I think that to me, I think that if you're going to have Jay, I was not a huge fan of Jay losing the match to Gunther at Saturday night's main event, only for him to just win the Rumble the week after, because it kind of, for me, I want to see Jay and Gunther be kept apart from each other until we get that big moment.
Right.
So it was like, okay, Jay wins the Rumble. We have to have Jay win the title here. Yeah. This has to be the win that cements Jay as a true main event level star.
Yeah.
And we've got to get Jay to win the match, win the title, and give him a title run that fans will remember. And I think that you can do that, provided you go all the way with it. So I would have Jay win at Mania, defeating Gunther.
Yeah.
I would probably say for the WWE title match, they're going to have Cody defend against Cena.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably say Cena wins here because, I mean, Cody's had that belt now a year almost. So
yeah,
I would say Cena getting that 17th title. Why not? I mean, me personally, I was a huge fan of Cena turning heel.
Me too.
I'm a little disappointed that he didn't get to appear on Raw the following night, but they're going to have him appear on, I think, this coming week. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes, because I think that fans have wanted this for years.
For sure.
I you know, and I guess it's unfortunate that it's happening now, though, because he's going to be retiring.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish we had more of a long-term heel storyline for John, but
yeah,
I mean, if we can get a few matches going with him and Punk, even revisiting him and Orton again with the roles reversed,
yeah,
there's a lot you can do with it. So I would definitely have seen a defeat Cody.
Yeah.
What else is on Mania? I think they announced a triple threat between Io, Bianca, and Rhea Ripley. I think that's okay. I would have, me personally, I think Bianca and Rhea, that match alone would have knocked it out of the park. I would love to see those two go at it. Io Sky, great athlete, phenomenal athlete. We're getting a triple threat match here, so I just don't know who's going to win here, because I think that I don't think I would have taken the belt off of Rhea so fast, because you're trying to make her a top star in the company. I don't want her to go heel either, because you already turned her baby face.
Right.
So I would probably keep the title on Io here. Yeah. Just because I feel like for me, I'm not a huge fan of the long drawn out title runs. I feel like a good 3 to 6 month title reign, I feel like, is good. That's how it should be, in my opinion. Just hot potatoing the titles around, I don't think does anything for anyone.
No.
So I think if you have Io retain, you could do a lot with Bianca and Rhea in a non-title feud. So that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would say Io retains. Charlotte and Tiffany, I already know that match is gonna be unbelievable. It's gonna be great. So
yeah.
I hope Tiffany retains, just because I feel like, you know, we get Tiffany some more momentum. She's really getting over with the crowd. I mean, both in character and in the ring. So I'm for Tiffany retaining. Charlotte's a great athlete in her own right. But I think it's Tiffy time, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
So Tiffany, I think, retains there. What else? I think those are the big ones.
Yeah, those are all the championships that I know of.
I think they're going to do something with Punk and Rollins and Roman. I think that's where things are heading now. So that should be interesting. I hope that's the main event for one of the two nights, probably night one if I had to guess.
Right.
So it gets Punk that main event at WrestleMania. So I think this will be a good spot for him and both Roman and Seth. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know who's gonna win that one. But I'm looking forward to that match. So I think they may be teasing some. I know they're teasing some stuff with Judgment Day, and I think that the women's tag title scene, they may do a match with that, and I tell you, the IC and US title pictures for both the men and the women. I hope we get good matches out of those. LA Knight just won the US title on SmackDown.
Right.
Braun Breaker a match going into Mania.
I mean, they kind of talking AJ, is the way it kind of looks.
Yeah.
For Braun,
Yeah.
Because they had that whole interaction where he caught the shirt and everything,
Yeah, I don't know what's going on though, because I think he's feuding with Logan Paul. So
yeah, I do remember because of can't remember his name at the moment. Came out there and kind of stirred the pot to get him to do that.
Yeah,
yeah, I do remember that. So I don't know. I'm just glad to see AJ, because he's one of my favorites. So
yeah, I think AJ's just a magnificent athlete. I know. Yeah. I just saw where he intends to retire when he's 50. I think I saw that.
Oh, okay. How old is he right now?
Did an interview. I think he's got to be like in his late 40s.
47.
47.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. He. I hope he continues as long as he can, because he's killing it. He's doing great. So, I think if AJ does wrestle Logan Paul, that should be a good match, though. I think their styles work.
Yeah. So I'm not one. I've never been a big Logan Paul fan, but what he does in the ring is very impressive.
It is. It is.
And I do respect him for the amount of he takes it seriously when it comes to wrestling.
Yeah.
And he's not just a celebrity trying to get a payday. He's actually became a wrestler. He's actually doing the moves. He's not just trying to. It's not like the celebrity manager that they used to do, in the early 2000s, and then they'd do like a little match or something. He's actually putting in the work, whereas some of those others haven't. And so I do respect him for that. And all of his matches have been amazing so far.
You can tell he's putting in the work for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a couple things that you said when you were doing your predictions, and I do have to say I agree with Jay. You can't call him main event and then not have him be the main event. Yeah. It's it has to happen sooner or later.
Yeah.
I have a question for you though.
Yes.
When it comes to Cena.
Yes.
So Cena said that this was his last year, but he said that when he was still a face. So was he lying to us? Is it going to be, because he said he's going to hang up the jorts. What if he comes out and wrestles in something completely different? And then he wasn't technically lying.
I wouldn't mind seeing Cena wrestle for another year or two if he wanted to. I mean, you get a lot of mileage out of a heel John Cena. I don't know where this is going. I don't know where the story is leading, but there's a lot you can do with a heel John Cena. And I really hope that I kind of wish this would extend past 2025.
I do too. He's going to have some, if they do this right, this could be amazing.
Yeah.
I agree with you when it comes to, I think that they're going to put the title on him because it'll be that 17th one. But at the same time, it'll be a heel run, which we haven't had since Dr. Thugonomics, so it's going to be for all of us. A lot of the people who are Cena fans, they were kids and now they're not. And so now is the best time to have him as a heel, because all of us who were Cena fans seeing him now is like very exciting for us.
It reminds me of when Hogan turned heel in '96 at Bash in the Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And look where it turned out. I mean, right. NWO, huge success for WCW. And like I said, I think there's a lot you can do with this. I don't know how you could pull this off, but imagine Cena and The Rock being a tag team.
That'd be crazy. Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, because they had really cool, they had that whole feud that they did. You know, there's chemistry there. We know that there's chemistry there. That's the only match that they've ever said the day after WrestleMania. We're planning our WrestleMania match for next year, and had a whole year-long build up to it, and we knew that it was going to happen, you know?
And it was really good. I mean, both matches were. I think their first one, in my opinion, was the best one.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I am looking forward to seeing where they go with this. So, I just have a couple more questions. We're about to get you off of here and everything. Do you have anything that's coming up that maybe you want to talk about?
Yeah. So, next month we have this event called Rockin' Pod, which is a music convention that's happening in Nashville. It's at the fairgrounds. It happens every year, and they're going to have musicians there, podcasters and content creators. I'm going to be there representing Wrestling with Heart. We're going to have a table set up, so if people listening and are looking to go, it's the weekend of April the 11th. We're going to be there on the 12th. Come on out, look it up, Rockin' Pod. We hope to see you there.
Awesome. And if people want to follow you, how can they do that?
Yes, so we are on Facebook. Punch in Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr. Like us, give us a thumbs up, follow us, give us a like. We're on Instagram at Wrestling with Heart, on Threads at Wrestling with Heart, and we're on Blue Sky at wrestlingwithheart.bsky.social. We're on all podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Punch us on any of those. Subscribe to us, and YouTube especially, because we want to get those numbers up. Yeah. Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Karr. Subscribe to us on all the podcast platforms. Check us out. Got a lot of great content coming.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts before I get you off of here?
Yes, I just want to say thank you again for having me. I know we were trying to get a good time and a good day to do this interview. It's been months, so thankful we were able to do this, and glad it worked out.
Yeah, man, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you being on here. Thank you for this, and I will talk to you for a few more minutes after we end this recording. We're going to say bye here for now, and again, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
If You Give a Dad a Podcast.